Hello, everybody. Welcome to the fifth video on this lecture series on HCI. And today we would be talking about task-centered design. So these are some of the contents we would be covering today, from understanding to all the way to differentiating between task-centered design and design thinking. Although these two are quite similar, I really want to focus on how they are different from each other. And there are numerous user-centered design approaches, each with its own unique methods and focus areas. These approaches can be used individually or combined to create effective and user-friendly design. So do keep in mind that these are not like two distinct design approaches. This could be this could be combined together based on what you are trying to solve. And but keep in mind, although they do share some similarities, there's always some differences, and we will look into it at the end of this slide. So let's first understand what is task-centered design. So in a task-centered design, we are primarily focused to design the application, and the goal is to create an interface that effectively supports users in performing their tasks. Well, however, to achieve this, we must first gather detailed information about the task and understand user needs, which involves designing questions and conducting research. So here are some of the components of the task-centered design. So there's four that I have mentioned here. And when I talk about design thinking approach as well, you would find some similarities. So I'm just giving a heads up before I post the other video. So let's talk about each of these serially. So under user and task identification, you identify and engage with potential users to gather detailed information about who they are and what the tasks they need to perform. And then you would collect those tasks, and then you collect detailed descriptions of the task users perform, including their goals, steps involved, and the context. And then under task analysis, you create detailed, realistic scenarios that describe specific user tasks. These scenarios help in understanding the sequence of actions, decisions, and potential challenges. And then you analyze tasks to identify the necessary steps, required tools, and possible roadblocks user might face. Moving into the third step, use task scenarios to inform the decision process. So once you have collected all those scenarios and information, you would be using those to inform the design in your design process. You would want to start with a low fidelity prototype and then refine them through iterative testing and feedback. You would want to conduct usability tests where real users perform the identified tasks and gather feedback to understand their experience and identify areas where which you could improve on the application or any product that you're designing. And lastly, we move into evaluation and iteration. You'd want to regularly evaluate the design by testing it with users throughout the development process, and then continuously improve the design based on their feedbacks and testing results to better support user tasks and resolve any usability issues. So let's look more into user and task identification. I think breaking them down further would give more clarity. So let's get some definitions and why, when, and where, and how to use it. So to engage with users, you would want to actively reach out and interact with potential users of the system. So the goal is to gather in-depth information about their demographics, which includes like age, gender, occupation, and also like psychographics. So that includes like attitudes, interests, personal values, and also behaviors. So how they currently perform tasks and what tools do they often use, right? So it's about understanding users on a personal level to inform the design process. And why would you want to engage with users? So understanding users is critical to engage to create a product that meets the need and expectations. And engaging with users helps designers to identify pain points and challenges that users face. And you can also find some unmet needs and opportunities for improvements. You can validate assumptions and also gather real world insights. And you can also build empathy and user centered mindset with the design team. And when do you usually engage with the user? So this step is crucial during the early stages of the design process, specifically during the research and requirement gathering phase. However, user engagement should be a continuous activity throughout the design lifecycle to keep the design aligned with user needs and validate design decisions. So all throughout your design process, you would want to keep in mind this whole process is iterative and that you're coming back to it to get validated as if they are happy with your updated designs, with the improvements that you have implemented by gathering their feedbacks. So you might be wondering, where would you engage with these users? And so user engagement should take place in environments where the user naturally interacts with the product. Could be home or office or outside or during while they're performing workouts, depending on what product that you're designing. And so this could include like on-site, so maybe visiting users at their workplace or home to observe them in their natural setting. You could also conduct it remotely, and however, it's largely dependent on the context. So observing users in an environment that closely mimics where the product will be used is going to give you the best result. So there's various methods that can be used to engage with users, and this could include like interviews. So conduct one-on-one or group interviews to ask open-ended questions about the user's experience and their preferences. And also you could conduct surveys where you distribute survey to gather quantitative data on their demographics, behavior, and satisfaction levels. You could also use focus groups. So let's look into an example here. Um, so here's a scenario where you are asked to design a project management application, and here's a background of it. So a software dev team is tasked with designing a new task management application for a tech startup, and they want to create a tool that streamlines task organizations, collaborations, and tracking their team members. So here's a picture that I shamelessly stole from Monday.com, and it's actually a task management tool. So the primary users of the task management application are the software development team members, which includes devs or developers, designers, project managers, and quality assurance testers. So let's talk about task collection here. How would you do that? So you would want to create tasks. User needs to be able to create a new task, including adding titles, descriptions, due dates, and assigning them to a specific team. And as you can see here, there's the finalized budget part that talks about that shows the timeline and the people who are assigned in it and the status of it. And if you want to add further properties, you could just simply hit the plus icon and it's going to ask you which sort of feature would you want to add in the following column. Now let's say users require features for task collaboration, such as like tagging team members, assigning priorities, and setting reminders. And users need to monitor overall project progress throughout the visualization, like task boards, charts, and progress reports. So you see, like in this case, you would want to create a detailed scenario of common tasks that user will perform. So these users are going to give you an idea of what sort of feature that they're looking for, and that's the reason it's called task-centered design. So moving on to task analysis. Um, there's again two parts to it, but then again, quite the same thing. And let's first understand what it is. So you would create a task scenario and then you would do the task breakdown. And let's see what does it mean. So task scenarios involve creating detailed and realistic narratives that describe specific tasks the user will perform with the system. And these scenarios illustrate the step-by-step process, including actions, decisions, and potential challenges users may encounter. And so task scenarios help designers and developers understand the user's perspective, and this ensures that the design supports real world cases. They provide a concrete basis of evaluating how well the system facilitates user tasks and for identifying areas that needs improvement. And how would you do it? So, based on user research, identify the critical tasks that the system must support. So, create a scenario. So, write a detailed description of these tasks, including the context, steps, decisions, and challenges. Build personas. Leverage user personas to ensure scenarios that are realistic and relevant. And also, you might want to share these scenarios with actual users to validate the accuracy of it. Now, what does task breakdown mean? So, task breakdown involves analyzing each task to identify the necessary steps, the tools, and some potential roadblocks. And it helps you like dissecting the task into smaller components to understand the sequence of actions required to complete it successfully. And breaking down tasks help in pinpointing specific user needs, potential pain points, and areas where the system can provide support to or streamline the whole process. And this ensures that every aspect of the task is considered in the design. And so, how would you do it? You'd want to break down each task identified in the scenario into individual steps, and you would want to determine the tools and resources that's required for each step. And then you'd want to consider potential challenges and barriers that might face at each step, and then record all those steps, the tools that was needed, and the roadblocks that was faced in a very structured format. And this is going to give you an idea of where they are facing a roadblock. So this will give you a very clear idea. So let's look into an example of task identification and breakdown. So let's take designing a grocery shopping app. A team of UX designers are tasked with redesigning a grocery shopping application to enhance the user experience and increase the user engagement. They begin by implementing the task scenario and breakdown phase of task center design. So you as a user, you're given a task to add to cart and also be able to remove products from your carts. So let's say you're quite used to swipe to remove option if you're an iOS user. So you might want to try doing this on Instacart, and you would see that it doesn't have that feature. Rather, it says remove from. It gives you a remove button here. But I think instead of also putting it down here, it would be quite nice to have the swipe to remove action, because we have built a mental model as to how we normally remove in iOS. And if we're using this app on the device, we should be looking for something similar, something that feels familiar. So I think me as a user, I would provide one feedback, which would be it would be nice to have a swipe to remove option here. Now let's look into design and prototyping. So let's look into how would you design and prototype. So you would want to start by creating a low fidelity prototype based on task scenarios and user feedbacks. Then you would be conducting a user test by observing users as they interact with the prototypes, asking them to maybe think aloud, or you could, as a UX designer, you could also be observing them. You would be reiterating on the design based on the user feedback after they have provided you a feedback, and you would refine the prototype and make improvements to address those usability issues. And then you keep repeating the process until the designs meet the user's need and achieves the desired usability goal. So let's look into an example of what that means. So here's an example on the left of a low fidelity prototype. As you can see, this is just a basic uh, black and white prototype of how the app is supposed to look like. Although this is not the final design, this is where you start from, and you are continuously going to gather feedback as you keep updating the design until you have reached a place where you are satisfied that, okay, maybe this is something where we can head on to creating a high fidelity prototype or a mock-up. And once you have created that, you would want to reiterate on that as well. And lastly, you would be evaluating and iterating. It's the same thing again. um, Evaluation and iteration involves continuously assessing and refining the design based on user feedback and testing results. This process ensures that the interface effectively supports user tasks and resolves any usability issues. And it is crucial because it ensures that the design meets users' needs and expectation, leading to a more of a user-friendly and effective UI. And continuous improvements based on feedbacks help you to enhance user satisfaction and overall usability. And again, you do it throughout the design process. And how do you do that? You perform user testing, conduct regular usability testing sessions where you are having them over, or you can send it to them to interact with the product. Then you are going to collect some feedback of what they feel is wrong or could be improved about the design, and you could also perform it as interviews or observational studies. You would then analyze the data that you have collected, and then you would make refinement improvement based on the data that you have collected, and then you would be wanting to collab with your design teams, stakeholders, and anyone else who's involved in directly or indirectly to the project. And here are some additional notes that's going to provide you with some extra tips and how you can get some deeper insights as to what they're looking for. And you would want to keep some variables in mind while you are conducting the research. And let's look into it. So while you're identifying users, you want to engage with potential users, not like a general user, you would want to look more for specific ones who are going to use your app. So if it's an app dedicated towards college students, you would want your potential users to be college students. So reach out to those individuals who are likely to use your products. So to gain deeper insights into user tasks and their contexts, consider these key aspects. So, what prompts the user to start their tasks? So, identify the events or conditions that initiate those tasks, such as a notification, or is it a specific need, or is it like during a scheduled time? Then, how will your users know when the task is complete? So, for that, you'd want to determine the indicators or results that signify the successful completion of the task. And that includes maybe a confirmation message or a completed form or a message in the end that says like it's completed. Also, what will the users be expected to know when starting the task? Understand the foundational knowledge or skills users should have before beginning the task, such as prior experiences, basic instructions, or how familiar are they with using that system. Then, what do the users actually need to know to complete the task? You want to identify the specific informations, instructions, or skills necessary for successfully completing the task, which may include detailed steps or troubleshooting tips or specialized knowledge. And what tools or information do users utilize during the course of the task, like during the task? So list any physical or digital tools, resources, or information that the user interact with while performing the task, such as like software apps or manuals or checklists. Secondly, develop task scenarios, create multiple task scenarios based on the format information gathered. Again, it's quite the same thing that I have talked about before. Identify the user's ability, background, and attitude towards technology, system use, understand how users will interact with your system, and also try to understand which type of user are they, whether or not they are someone you have to provide a step-by-step instruction. Is it someone who has um, who you can offer a customizable option? Is it someone who's a frequent user, or is it someone who's just a casual user too? Also, characteristics of an effective task description. You would want to focus on the what, not the how. So clearly state what needs to be done without specifying how to do it. You would tell them what to do, but don't show them how they're going to do it. And be very specific. Provide a detailed and precise information about the task as to what they're supposed to do. So if it's a grocery app, and so you would want them to add to cart and all the way to checkout and then order the grocery. Also, describe a complete job. Make sure that you have a proper description that says where do they start from and what is it that you are hoping for them to finish. But don't show them. Just clearly state what's to be done, and also identify the users. Clearly indicate who will be performing the tasks. Is it an expert user? It's a frequent one, or is it a casual? Here are some task examples you want to keep in mind. So first one would be learning methods. How do your users learn to perform the tasks? Where are these tasks typically carried out? What are the characteristics of these tasks involved? The tools used, the communications, what are the deadlines, and some potential problems or issues that could arise during their process. So let's take this example of booking a round trip from New York to San Fran. So who would it be? It would be for frequent travelers, both business and leisure, who have basic computer skills and access to the internet. So your task breakdown would be all of these that we mentioned earlier. And here's the reason behind it. Again, this is also something I've mentioned before. So you'd want to focus on the what, not the how would they do it. You would want to be as specific as you can while you are having them use your system. And then you would want to write down the whole process that took them to maybe book a flight. You could also create personas, and these personas are not actual people, but these capture the essence of your actual users. So this captures user characteristics. It's going to represent the attributes and behaviors of your current users. It's going to have a very synthesized profile. Again, although not real individuals, personas are based on genuine user data and insights and authentic representation. You would want to avoid creating idealized versions. Keep personas as realistic and grounded in the actual user experiences. And it has to be very diverse. in perspective. Include people from every ethnicity, from every group. Be as inclusive as you can, and keep in mind again who your specific users are, and design it accordingly. And develop several personas to cover for the different types of users interacting with your system. Here's an example of how the persona is supposed to look like. Although these are not real people, I've created this persona of two different individuals. And this was based on the data I've gathered from friends or other students who were facing issue with streaming services. So I noted down their demographics on the left. I mentioned a direct quote from them. Then I defined their goals and frustrations. And then I included a scenario as to when do they face that sort of frustration. Third, you'd want to categorize those tasks, organize tasks according to how often they occur and their level of importance. Here are some more tips on that. Moving on, lastly, you would want to assess task scenarios. Again, it's quite the same thing as I talked before. You would want to evaluate these task scenarios for relevance and accuracy. Okay, now, so when you gather requirements, there's two types of requirements to keep in mind. So there's a functional one, there's a non-functional requirement. So in the functional, you define what the design or the product will do, and it's typically expressed as functions, tasks, or behaviors. And on the non-functional requirements, you specify the characteristics or constraints of the design product or a system. So you could think of application that allows user to register by providing them an email and password forms inside the forms. And a non-functional requirement would be telling them that the password must be 8 characters long, perhaps including a special character and a digit. Here are some key differences between the functional requirements and the non-functional ones. And while doing so, you must categorize those requirements based on their relevance and addressing tasks. So there could be some must have requirements as to what are some of the things that you must include in the software or in the application. There are some should requirements that you use proper rationale to find that if this should be there or not, and some things that would be nice to have. And then you would also want to exclude some requirements which isn't like really necessary to keep there. So let's look into some of the levels of interviews, and there's 5 different. And let's look into the description for each and when to use it. So there's the informal and open-ended with no predefined questions or formats. The conversation flows naturally based on the respondent's answer. When you're exploring new or unfamiliar topic where flexibility or depth are needed, and they're partially structured. This combines some structured and element with open-ended questions, and you would want to use this when there is a need for some consistency in topics covered. I think these are like quite self-explanatory, so I'm going to leave this here and you can take a screenshot of it. Okay, so now let's move into survey or online questionnaire. So there's 5 things to keep in mind. You want to have a clear objective. You want to know your audience. You would want to design the questionnaires based off that, and then you collect the data and analyze it, and then you apply those to towards your design. There's 4 different types of surveys. There's the open-ended questions, like what do you think about a new product, and you are going to have a answer box, and you can fill in with as many words as you want and whatever you want to say about it. There's no structure to it. Then there's a ranking order. Oh, sorry. Then there's a close-ended questions that gives you options to select from or anything that you want to specify nonetheless. And there's the ranking question, and you can select which one you think is better, and you can rank them by giving them a number. And there's the unstructured single or multiple selection questions. So this you could think of multiple choice questions. So you could select many or maybe one based on what you are asking the user. And then lastly, there's the Likert scale where you can rate their ask the ratings for their experiences. So surveys conducted through online questionnaire can help you reach a broader audiences, and this makes it easier to gather diverse and extensive data. And this approach is particularly advantageous when you need to collect feedback from a large number of users, regardless of where they live. And here are some key considerations to the step for conducting effective online survey. So now let's look into some of these examples for open-ended and close-ended questions. Uh, I've written down the objective formats and analysis here. You can look into it. But for now, let's look into some of the differences. So it often begins with why. how and what. So you allow them to provide as much depth as they can about something, and there's no structure to it. You wouldn't want to normally start with a leading question. You just want to keep it as general as you can, and they're used to collect non-numerical or qualitative data, and close-ended questions provide you with numeric and quantitative data. And about the order and ranking, we can see an example here. So it asks you to please rank the following factors, and then here are the five variables, and here are the score for each. So you could select in between one of these scores, and this gives you an idea of which feature is mostly preferred. And then you can also design unordered single multiple selections questions. So here you would want to ask your users like what kind of music do they like. They can select from any four of these, or they could select multiple options there. And lastly, there's the Likert scale. And Likert scales are commonly used in surveys to measure opinions, attitudes, and perceptions. And they consist of a series of statement or questions where respondents indicate their level of agreement or disagreement. And the scale typically ranges from one extreme to the other, often includes options such as like strongly agree to strongly disagree. And the beautiful thing about this is that it provides clear, quantifiable data on respondents' attitude and opinions. It is also suitable for statistical analysis, allowing researchers to measure central tendencies like the mean, median, and the variability, such as like the standard deviation, and also that you're offering them a neutral option, which allows your users to indicate a lack of opinion. And the choice between a 5 or a 7 or a 9 points can impact the data's granularity. A 7 or a 9 scale provides like more detailed insights, but maybe more complex for respondents. So you would want to make sure which one to choose from. And so I think Likert scale is pretty helpful when it comes to taking feedback, because it gives you a lot of insight about what the user thinks about your product. Here are some additional tips. Please avoid leading questions that assumes a specific opinion. So don't tell them like how well did you like the website? Just ask them like did you like the website or not? So based on that you can design a leading question, but don't impose your biases right up there. Ensure clarity, but by avoiding overlapping options in the questions. Avoid double barreled questions that combine multiple issues. Just state one issue at a time, and then look for existing questionnaires if possible, and then include questions that aid in interpreting results, and design a visually appealing and easy to read questionnaire. Make sure that your fonts are perfect. You would want to like this is my personal opinion, but you would want to use a serif font because it actually aids in reading. So you would see like most of the papers are like Times New Roman, and it's usually like those research papers or APA papers. And I think the reason they do that is because I read somewhere that it's because it helps you stay connected. So let's talk about the task centered design versus the design thinking approach. So here are some of the key differences. Design thinking has a broader scope, focusing on the problem solving, while task-centered design is specifically tailored to optimizing user tasks within the interface. The approach is also different. TCD follows a structured process centered around understanding and addressing user tasks. Also, the outcome varies. So, TCD focuses on designing interfaces that are efficient, user friendly, and aligned with user tasks. So, again, you would want to make sure that you know which approach to go with when you're designing an application and who you're designing for. And it is always based on the context. And here are some key similarities. Both of these are user-centered approach. It's both of them are iterative process. It both requires you to show empathy and understanding, and the rest. And we will talk more on design thinking later in the later videos, and I will really go in depth in that one because I personally subscribe to design thinking approach when I am designing something or having to conduct a research. So we will see more of that in the further videos. Awesome. So let's summarize. And here are the key principles of task centered design. And here are some of the benefits. I'm going to leave it here as you can probably take a screenshot or read it through. So pause it if you want to. But that's pretty much it for today. And as you can see, I'm quite sick today, but I really wanted to upload it because it has been a while, and I have been procrastinating for some time now, but I really wanted it to be up there. Um, in the next videos, in the upcoming video, I would be talking extensively about the design thinking approach, and it's my favorite one, and I'm pretty sure that all of you are going to like it. And after that, we would be looking into some types of interfaces. We would be understanding the design psychology. And sooner or later, we would be actually starting the Figma crash course. So I'm really excited, and I hope you all are. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks a lot for watching the videos. Drop your comments if you have any questions. I'll try to clarify it. But that's all about today. Thanks a lot. See you guys next week.